wool and linen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll treat that from the outside in, okay? So first, the halachic side of it. So in earlier times, like 2 generations ago, certainly in Europe, but even to a lesser degree in the States, you knew what you were buying when you bought it. Okay, clear? Did you ever see, like with food, it's the worst. Like, did you ever, like, you pour yourself a drink of this clear liquid and it tastes like very sweet strawberry soda, but it's completely clear? And then you look at the back, hey, what is this? And like it's 4 inches, like of chemicals that you never heard of. Okay, so, oh wow, I wonder what hydrochloride 4A is. Now that I drank it, okay. And gosh, it was the 5th ingredient, isn't that something? Okay, so the same holds true with clothing. In earlier times, people went to the tailor after having bought cloth. So all the thread was cotton, and you knew if you bought linen, you bought linen. If you bought wool, you bought wool. The thread's cotton, no questions. Okay, when the world became more developed, the possibility of blending fabrics became more real. So shatnez, which was a mitzvah that's written in the Torah, but that people didn't have to deal with for thousands of years, suddenly, just in the 20th century, became a hot item again. Like it's a mitzvah nobody heard about much for 3,000 years. And they, hey, wait a minute, what am I wearing? Okay. So in the modern era, better clothing. Did I say less expensive clothing? I did not. Better clothing that's made out of wool, oftentimes, not always, will have some linen in it. I will tell you where the linen will be. They'll use linen mixtures for buttonholes, for interfacing in lapels, okay? And sometimes for interfacing in the front if it's a suit with a stiff front. Better winter coats. So these items, if they're wool, you have to have them checked for shatnez. So when you go to have it checked for shatnez, every big city will have someone who's learned how to do this. It's not a big deal. The shatnez checker will have a microscope. The fibers look different. So you could tell, like in an instant, whether there's shatnez or not. So you tell the shatnez checker if you want the shatnez replaced. So that would mean he has to be trained as a tailor. He'll open the collar, take out the linen interfacing and put in cotton interfacing and sew it back. Okay, or put in new threads around the buttonholes. So that's how shatnez checking works technically. So again, better clothing may be wool linen mixtures or have linen additions. Cheaper clothing is not going to have it. In New York, this became such a big deal, and the observant public is like numerous enough. A lot of brand name suits are pre-shatnez checks. They have labels in the inside. Yeah, Barney's, I'm trying to think. There are quite a number of them. My Place, there are a lot of men's clothes. A lot of them are pre-shatnez checked. Okay, but women's clothes are not, okay? Because women don't buy the same outfits, and also they're less likely to be shatnez.
That's the logistics, but like, why?
I didn't tell you why. I told you I'd go from the outside in, didn't I? Okay, so that's the outside. So if you personally, now you know the outside of this. Now let's move one step in. So there are a whole body of laws that are called chukim. The word chok literally means something engraved. So if you go to buy a ring and the jeweler asks whether you want a name engraved, he'll say, At rotza lachkok shem. Okay? There are laws that are engraved into nature that work whether you understand them or not. So one of these laws is gravity and velocity. So if you were to have, for instance, 3 people on the edge of the 85th floor, one of them is Einstein, recently risen from the dead, okay, who really understands gravity. He really understands it. He understands the electromagnetic core. He understands why we don't float backwards to other planets. Okay, he knows this. Another one is me, where I could talk about gravity, but I don't understand it really. And another one, I'll keep it down to 3, is a 9-year-old who never heard the word gravity, okay? So together we hold hands, we say 1, 2, 3, jump, and all 3 of us jump off the 85th floor. What's going to happen in several seconds? We will all be dead. Okay, got this? So it doesn't matter whether or not you understand the process still works. You got it? So this is true in the physical world, as you could see. Okay, understanding doesn't affect the process. It enriches your relationship to the process, but it doesn't change anything. This is true also emotionally. If you hurt someone, they're going to feel what? How are they going to feel? They're going to feel hurt. How will they feel about you? They'll feel vulnerable, suspicious, afraid, angry, yeah? They're not going to, oh, you hurt me. Hi, I love that. That's not going to happen. So this is true whether you understand it or whether you don't. Okay, this is clear? Okay, which is why people are sometimes unreasonably angry at people who don't understand the consequences of their choices. Clear? Okay, there are laws in the spiritual world that work whether we understand them or not. So these work center around many things. They're all called chukim. So for our purposes, we're going to focus only on forbidden mixtures. So now we'll go into how they work to the degree to which we have them. But they would work whether we understand them or not. Okay, so the underlying concept in all of the forbidden mixtures, which include shatnez, which include meat and milk, which include not mixing plant species or animal species, all of these are forbidden mixtures. Every physical thing in the world has a spiritual purpose. Does that make sense to you? So the same way the physical ecology is really intricate and really complex, and when you fool around with it, it really doesn't work. Okay, you understand what I mean? If you were to take all of the earthworms out of the earth, then nothing would grow, because we need oxygen in the little tunnels they dig. If you were to take an appendix out of everybody's body, there would be far more infectious disease because the appendix is part of the immune system. Okay, this is clear? Everything has a purpose. Everything also has a spiritual purpose. There's such a thing as spiritual ecology, which Hashem knows and we don't necessarily know. The greater a person is in terms of not just their information base, but their understanding of spirituality experientially, the more they'll understand chukim. Okay, so intellectual understanding here will only get you so far. There's a different level of understanding. So what all of these forbidden mixtures have in common is that they, so to speak, distort each other. So they don't all have the same negative effect. Each one is unique. So there's a scale. The least severe is mixing plant species. Above that is animal species. Above that is shatnez. Above that, and the most severe, is meat and milk. So each one of them creates negative force through different spiritual energies opposing each other that we can't grasp easily, but somebody who is more spiritually attuned might. Okay, so let's start with the easier ones. The easiest one to understand is not mixing fruit species. Okay, so that would mean that each species has its own statement, so to speak. Each one displays creativity and intricacy and beauty in a unique way. And when you distort it, you're empowering yourself to say, I don't like it as it is, I know better. So here, the negative act is the arrogance of the person who's doing the mixture. The result is not as bad as the arrogance of the person who does it. You understand this? So because of that, with mixed fruits or vegetable species, what's forbidden is the act of mixing it, but the result isn't relevant to us. Okay, clear?
That's why we're allowed to eat it.
You're allowed to eat it, but you aren't allowed to mix it because of the arrogance that the act generates inside the person. You could say, wait, I do a lot of arrogant things. This is just one of many. Okay, but the Torah is saying, no, this is one that God himself is saying can take you over the edge. Okay, next, you have shatnez. No, actually, before that, you have animal species, where the act of mixing them is forbidden. But it almost is impossible to get a fertile offspring. So when you say you could use it, it's like, yes, you can, but that's not, the world's not going to change because of this. So yes, you could mix, you could make a mule by mixing a horse and a donkey, but the mule won't bear offspring. Okay, clear? Okay, so again, the act is the arrogance of the mixture, and Hashem himself will see that nothing continues. Next, you have shatnez. So shatnez, the act itself is forbidden, but it goes further. You can't even wear the garment. So the question is, what is there about wool and linen? Why, in what sense do they have oppositional forces? So to understand what wool and linen say, we have to go back to the story of Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel. Do you remember the story?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did Cain do? They both have the whole world in front of them. They decide to engage in different things. What does Cain decide to engage in? So he decides to grow things in the field. So he wanted to see his own productivity. He saw the world as being his own. Conversely, Hevel became a shepherd. He wanted to nurture. So they're both going in different directions. Cain wanted to make an offering to God. Now he has every possible kind, fruit, vegetable, tree, anything that grows. What did he choose to offer?
Flax.
Okay, flax seed, not even whole pieces of. Okay, why did he want to offer that? There are two reasons, bear with me. The simpler reason is there's nothing else he could do with it, like, what's it good for? So if I can't use it, I'll dedicate it. So that means his perception of what reality is that the world was given to me. If having a relationship with God gives me pleasure, I want it, but I don't want to do it at my own expense. So even a relationship to religion could be the relationship of a taker. Do you understand this? So that's what he did. Conversely, what Hevel wanted to offer was his sheep, which he identified with closely, and say, I want to offer the best of my flocks. Whatever I own belongs to you. So he was taking reality and seeing it as irrelevant except to the degree to which he could use it as a giver. So they're both extremes. Okay, I want to point this out. So Hevel is saying the spiritual world is irrelevant except to the degree that it gives me pleasure. And, Cain. And Hevel is saying the physical world is irrelevant except to the degree to which I could use it to connect to God. They're both extreme. Neither extreme is perfect. Okay, so both of them were mistaken. However, of the two mistakes, the one who got a chance but failed at that chance to rectify their mistake was Cain, because Cain killed Hevel. Okay, now how did he come to kill Hevel? What were they fighting about?
The offerings.
The offering. So the inner motivation was envy. But the external motivation, which isn't stated in the text but is stated in Rashi from the Talmud, they were fighting about the world and its nature. So Cain said, everything on the earth is mine. And Hevel said, the spiritual world is mine. Now, if two people agree on borders, there's nothing to fight about. So what were they fighting about? So it's hinted at the text through the word et. It says et Cain, et Hevel, et Achiv, that there were three additional people in the world besides those two. They're sisters. Why they're not given names in the text is a different question, which I'll deal with later if there's time. 3 women and only 2 men. What's the problem?
One of them can't have a child.
Or one of them gets 2. And
Oh, one gets 2 and one gets 1, so both of them are going to want 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the argument. Cain is saying, well, physical pleasure, sexual pleasure belongs to this world. I get the extra woman. Hevel was saying, no. The bond between a man and woman is spiritual. It just happens through physicality. The other woman is mine. Okay, so they were arguing about relationship. A secondary argument that they had was about the place where later the Beis HaMikdash would be built, which they were sensitive from the very beginning to its extraordinary holiness. So Cain was saying, it's mine, it's on the earth. Hevel was saying, no, it's made out of earth, but it's mine, it's a spiritual place. So we're fighting about the definition of reality. So they were both wrong, okay? But what does the Torah say about it? There's a place for wool and there's a place for linen, meaning there's a place for severity, selfishness, self-concern, being tough. There's a place for that. There's a place for softness, for giving, for spirituality. But when you mix them, you ruin their integrity. So there are times you should say no and times you should say yes. But saying, it all depends, like it depends on how you look at it. It's all relative. Like, it just depends, like, that's not good. So what does this have to do with clothing and fabric? So remember we said everything in the physical world has a spiritual parallel? So the same way humans wear clothing to make their statement about who they are to the world. Is that true? That's why we care about what we wear. The soul has clothing. The clothing of the soul is thought, speech, and action. That's how you let the world know who you really are. That's how you even let yourself know who you really are. So there are times for wearing wool. There are times for wearing linen. When you should wear linen, when you should say, no, I will not do this, I will not cross that line, don't mix it with wool. Maybe I would, okay. When you should wear wool, I'll give, I'll care, I'll self-transcend. Don't mix it with linen, as long as it's convenient for me. Got it? Don't mix them. So that's how Shatnez operates. Again, there's much more there that we don't understand than what we do. Okay, more questions. Such a complex parsha. No more questions?
What's up with the whole, like, you can't pull your, like, basically you can't pull your stuff with, like, an ox and a horse or a donkey?
Yeah.
Mixed animals. Like, why can't you plow the two mixed animals?
So there are two reasons for this. One is if you use both animals for plowing, when the day is over, you'll put them in the same barn and you'll end up with mixed species. Okay, but another reason is they don't have equal strength. An ox is much stronger than a donkey. So if you put them together behind the plow, the donkey will be struggling throughout its entire day to keep up with the ox and fail. So the concept there is also on a human level, you don't mismatch on purpose. You don't create situations where one person is doomed to failure and to stress because you're partnering them with somebody with whom they can't compete. It's not the right thing to do.